Okay, let's dig into this. We're seeing, all these amazing AI tools pop up, like ChatGPT, right? Super powerful, can really change how you work.
Definitely.
Huge potential.
But then there's this other side, this big worry, especially with work stuff, sensitive data, data privacy. That's a massive question.
Absolutely. And the sources we're looking at today, they really dive into that conflict. They mentioned some recent buzz around specific AI models. DeepSeek was named, I think, and how there are real security concerns, even at a national level sometimes. It really makes you think twice about just, firing off your company's data to some third-party service somewhere.
Totally. You don't know where it ends up, how it's used, if it's actually secure. It's kind of unnerving.
Right. So the really cool idea that this material explores is, well, what if you just didn't send it anywhere? What if you could run a really capable AI model, but locally, like right there on your own computer?
Keeping all that data safe and sound under your lock and key. Exactly.
Yeah.
But, and this is where it gets clever, the sources went further. They were like, okay, local's great, but what if I need to use it when I'm not at that computer?
Right. Like accessing your home setup from your work laptop, maybe, without letting the sensitive queries leave your personal machine.
Precisely. That's the tricky part they tackle. How do you bridge that gap securely?
And the sources pinpoint the tools for this specific job. They focus on Ollama, that's for actually running the language models locally, and then Ngrok, which is the piece that creates that secure connection, that tunnel, you could say, for remote access.
Yeah.
So that's our plan for this deep dive. Unpack how this whole setup works piece by piece based on these notes and articles.
Okay, so starting with the why. Why go to the trouble of setting up, as the sources kind of called it, your own private AI secret base? It really all comes back to that privacy angle. The goal they lay out is clear. Stop your sensitive work info from potentially feeding some public AI's training data.
Or just getting exposed to the usual risks of, cloud services. You want control.
You want control. You want to use these powerful LLMs for drafting things, summarizing, coding help, whatever.
Right.
But keeping that core data firmly on your own hardware. That's the dream scenario painted here.
And it's interesting, the sources mentioned they actually tried other ways first, like standard networking stuff.
Yeah, they did. They mentioned trying things like NAT port forwarding on a router, the sort of usual approach maybe.
Right, the typical home network fiddling.
And apparently it just didn't work out for them.
Yeah.
Hit a wall. And that failure seems to be what led them directly to Ngrok as the potential solution.
Okay, that makes sense. Sometimes the direct path isn't the one that works. So Ollama is the heart of this local setup then, the engine.
That's how the sources present it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the main tool for grabbing these big language models and getting them running right on your machine.
And finding it is easy.
Seems so. The material just points to ollama.com. Download, install. Pretty standard.
And the model selection sounds pretty wide too, not just one or two options.
Oh yeah, the sources list a bunch. Llama, Phi, Gemma, Mistral. Basically, a lot of the big open source names are there.
And you can just browse them.
Apparently, yeah.
Yeah.
On their site, ollama.com/search. Makes it easy to see what's available and maybe try different ones out.
That's cool. Did the sources give any hint about what kind of computer you actually need for this? Because these models can be hefty.
They did, actually, which is super useful. They tested on a MacBook Mini specific specs were 10-core CPU, 10-core GPU, and 16 gigs of unified memory.
Okay, 16 GB RAM, that gives a baseline. And how did it perform?
Well, as I said, a model like Phi 414B, which is kind of mid-size, I guess, ran smoothly. So, pretty well.
But bigger models.
Yeah. They specifically mentioned trying Mistral Small 322B and said it was obviously stuck. Or laggy, at least.
Right. So that 16 GB RAM might be okay for some models, but it definitely shows the hardware limitations. That's a really practical detail from the source.
Definitely. It grounds the whole idea in reality. And getting these models sounds dead simple with Ollama.
How so?
According to the sources, you just find the model you want on the Ollama site. They give you a command.
Like a terminal command.
Exactly. You copy it, paste it into your terminal, hit enter, and Ollama apparently just handles downloading it, setting it up, everything.
Yeah. Nice. Less messing around. And once it's installed, how do you use it day to day? Any key commands?
Yeah, the sources highlighted a few core ones. Ollama serve kind of starts the main background service.
Okay.
Then Ollama run followed by the model name, like Ollama run Llama 3. That's how you actually start chatting with a model.
Makes sense.
Ollama list shows you what models you've downloaded, useful if you forget. And Ollama arm plus the model name removes one if you need space.
Serve, run, list, remove. Got it. The basics.
Yeah, they listed others too: create, show, stop, pull, push, more advanced management stuff. But those first four are your main tools.
And when you run a model, what happens? Just a chat prompt appears.
Pretty much, yeah. The sources say you drop into this basic conversational mode in your terminal, and when you're done, you just type by.
Simple enough for quick tests, but what about using it from, I don't know, another program or remotely? You can't just chat in the terminal then.
Exactly. That terminal chat is fine, but for integrating it, you need API access, an application programming interface. It's like a formal way for software to talk.
Right, so your script or your remote connection can send a request and get a proper response back, not just text in a window. Does Ollama do that?
It does. And the good news, according to the material, is that it's basically running by default. When Ollama is active, the API is active too.
Oh, convenient. And where does this API live on your machine? Like, what's the address?
The sources specify the local endpoint. Think of it like the specific door number is http://localhost.11434 epigenerate. Localhost means this computer, and 11434 is the port number Ollama uses.
Localhost.11434. Okay, and you send requests there.
Yeah, using a POST request, that's just a standard web method for sending data. You package up what you want the AI to do and send it to that address.
And what kind of information do you send? The sources get into that.
They do. They list the key parameters. The main one, absolutely required, is model. You have to tell it which model to use.
Naturally.
Then prompt, which is just your text input, your question or instruction. You can also add a suffix if you need text tacked onto the end of the response for some reason.
Okay. Basic stuff. Anything more complex?
Yeah, a few interesting ones. There's an images parameter for multimodal models, like Lava, which the sources mentioned. You can send images encoded as base 64 text.
Ah, so it's not just text models. Cool.
Right. You can also control the output format. Ask for JSON, for instance. Super handy if another program needs structured data back.
That is useful. What about controlling the AI's creativity or style?
Yep, there's an options parameter for that. You can set things like temperature higher means more random creative answers. The sources say to check the model file documentation for all the possible options you can tweak there.
Model flow.
Okay. You can also override the model's built-in system message or its prompt template using the system and template parameters right in your API call. Gives you flexibility.
Nice. Any other useful parameters mentioned?
Two more stood out. Stream normally responses come back piece by piece, streaming. If you set stream to false, you wait and get the whole response in one go.
Might be simpler for some uses.
Could be. And keep alive, which tells Ollama how long to keep a model loaded in memory after you use it. Default is 5 minutes, apparently. Saves reloading it constantly if you're making frequent calls.
Okay, that makes sense for performance. And they tested this API locally.
Yeah, the sources confirmed it worked fine just using a standard tool like Postman to send requests to that localhost.11434 address.
Perfect. So local AI base.check. Local API access.check. Now, the remote part, getting to it from outside, that's the Ngrok piece, right?
That's the bridge. That's what Ngrok provides. The sources have that nice analogy. It's like creating a magical tunnel.
Yeah.
Or maybe a secure wormhole from your private local host out to the public internet. So the aliens, as they jokingly put it.
Meaning your remote self or maybe a specific application.
Right. So they can actually reach your Ollama API. It solves that problem they hit earlier where standard port forwarding failed.
Gotcha. And where do you get Ngrok? Same kind of deal as the Ollama.
Pretty much. ngrok.com. The sources walk through the install, specifically mentioning the macOS command line method.
Okay. And is there any setup needed after installing?
Yes. One crucial step highlighted was authentication. You need to link your installed Ngrok to your account using a command like ngrok config add auth token with the token you get from their website.
Right, so they know it's you creating the tunnel. Security.
Exactly. Then, the magic command that connects Ollama to the outside world, the one the sources specifically said worked.
Let me guess. Ngrok HTTP 11434.
Got it. Ngrok HTTP 11434 tells Ngrok, anything coming to the public address you're about to give me, send it straight to port 11434 on my local machine, which is where Ollama's API is listening.
And what happens when you run that? Does it just work?
The terminal output is key. The sources say to look for a line that says forwarding. That line will show you a public Ngrok URL.
Ah, the public entry point to the tunnel.
Precisely. It'll be an HTTPS address, usually something random looking like HTTPS, some characters, .ngrokfree.app or similar. That URL is now effectively your Ollama API, but accessible from anywhere.
Wow. And they tested that URL too from outside?
Yep. Sources confirmed they hit that public Ngrok URL with Postman, just like they did the local one, and bingo, they could talk to their local AI model remotely. It worked.
That really ties it all together. Local control, remote access.
There is one catch mentioned, though, with the free version of Ngrok.
Oh, what's that?
That public URL. It changes every single time you restart Ngrok.
Ah, okay, so it's not a permanent address unless you pay.
Exactly. The source material kind of positioned the free tier as, perfectly fine if your budget's tight for testing. But yeah, for a stable, permanent remote endpoint, you'd need a paid Grok plan for a static URL.
Makes sense. Free gets you functionality, paid gets you stability. So let's recap this whole journey then. We started with this tension. Powerful AI tools, but privacy worries.
Especially for work data.
Then the core idea from the sources. Run the AI locally using Ollama. Keep your data on your machine.
We saw how Ollama lets you download various models, run them, and importantly, access them via a local API on port 11434.
And finally, Ngrok steps in to punch that secure hole through your firewall using Ngrok HTTP 11434, giving you a public URL that tunnels requests directly to your local Ollama instance.
Allowing that remote access, solving the initial challenge.
So the big picture for you listening, based on what these sources laid out, is that there's a viable path here. You can use powerful AI, keep your data private on your own hardware,
and still get the benefit of accessing it from other locations when you need to. It combines that security with flexibility.
It really does. Which leads to maybe a final thought to chew on, building on all this.
Okay.
Now that you know this kind of local yet remotely accessible AI setup is possible, what does that unlock for you specifically? Are there projects or tasks you held back on because of data concerns that suddenly seem feasible now? What could you build with your own private AI base?